Good evening and welcome to Be Informed. My name is Carl Buhariwala and I founded Be Informed to help people make good decisions. Today we're looking at the topic of customer engagement. Before I proceed, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. Today we're joined by Michaux of Square M Solutions. We'll be talking today about how to engage with customers without more marketing spend. So I think this is a topical issue with budgets under constraint. So Michaux will capture some interesting ways to engage better with customers, retain them so that you can grow your business without having to spend too much on marketing. So today's session is being recorded and it's being presented in Australia. This session provides general information only. So if you do have any specific queries about your business circumstances, please do engage a professional like Michaux who can help you out in that respect. And from a housekeeping perspective, the session will take about 45 minutes. The seminar usually runs for about 25 minutes, which will go to Q&A. That's when you can have the chance to ask Michaux questions. There's also a one-page handout that Michaux has kindly prepared. If you after today's session, I'll send it through by email, and you can browse that at your leisure or share it with family and friends as you wish. So with that in mind, the session is being recorded. So if you do have to leave early, that's fine. You can watch the entire session on our YouTube channel. Without any further ado, I'll hand over to Michaux who will go through her seminar.
Thank you, Carl. It's a pleasure to be here. Hi, everyone. So today's topic is finding the hidden growth lever in your business. And it's about helping you make good decisions by focusing on some key areas in your business. So over the next 25 minutes, I would like to teach you how to shift your focus for maximum impact. You're here to engage and network. So that's the third component of the sessions. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Carl. So I want to just talk to you for a moment about the truth about customer acquisition. So acquiring a new customer costs 5 to 7 times more than retaining an existing one. So most businesses pour resources into new leads. They feel like acquisition means growth, but in fact, the real growth, the real gold mine is often sitting inside their existing business, in their database, in their existing customer base. And when you understand that and you activate it well, a simple 5% increase in retention or upsell can lift your profits by 25 to 95%. And it's a massive return on investment when you get it right and when you understand how to look for it. So the question that I want you all to think about today is, how much did you spend on acquisition last quarter versus how much did you spend on retention initiatives? And the imbalance can often find the missed opportunity in your business. It's as much about understanding your customers' needs as it is about consciously retaining or going through retention processes. So I often talk about a print company that I worked with where they had a customer who was very happy, and you would think on the surface of it that they were doing all the right things with them. But that customer was 50% of their revenue, and the customer left them. When they went and talked to the customer about why they left, they said, "Oh, we didn't need print anymore. We wanted digital." And the business that I was working with, they hadn't been talking to their customer about the future of print and what it meant for their business, because they could have done the digital work and the customer loved them so much they would have stayed with them. But they chose to leave because the two businesses didn't understand each other's strategy well enough and understand the future of their paths forward and how they could continue to work together. So if they had each communicated to each other better, and really that falls on the person who is providing the service, so the printer in this instance, If they had understood their customer better, they wouldn't have lost that revenue, and they wouldn't then be having to go and find new customers to fill that void. Can we go to the next slide, please, Carl? So avoiding churn, as you just heard in that story, is a really important part of doing business. It's about having a leaky bucket. High churn means you're constantly putting more customers in the top of a bucket that is leaking out the bottom. So every churned customer represents the loss of their entire lifetime value. So not just the money that they're spending with you this month, but the money that they've spent with you over the life of that relationship they've had with your business. If you're a retailer, you might feel like that customer's just coming in to buy one thing, but repeat business means they're coming back over and over again, and that's that lifetime of business that you're losing and the opportunity cost of the future revenue stream you could have won. For services businesses, that's really important because, services business derive most of their revenue from monthly recurring revenue. And understanding how to retain that monthly recurring revenue and grow it is very important as well. When customers churn, your marketing spend has to then match to replace them, so it's increasing. And rather than spending that money on improving your service to your customers, developing new products, you're then having to spend it on marketing just to maintain the status quo instead of being able to spend it on investing in your business to grow it in a different way or a more profitable way. And then reputational damage, when customers are churning because they've had poor experiences, that word of mouth knock on then can cause a great deal of consternation for you, because a few negative Google reviews or a little bit of just word of mouth in the local community or within your industry can then actually inhibit your ability to continue to grow the business or indeed to replace that lost revenue. Can we move to the next slide, please, Carl? So the opportunity cost of ignoring retention, the opportunity cost is that if your customers are happy and you're retaining them, they buy again, they buy more, and they refer others. It's the inverse of what we just talked about on the previous slide. It's a little bit, you might go, well, that's obvious. And it is. But this is your hidden growth lever. This is how your existing customers can help you to grow your business. Now, I've been doing some work with an IT company, and they're doing some research, and the research agencies shared data with me, which shows that over the long term, they have proof that as you increase customer satisfaction, it increases revenue, and it increases not just retention revenue, but increases share of wallet with those customers. Now, again, you might say, no kidding, that's obvious. And it is. But how often do you think about it in your business? How often do you consciously think, what are my satisfaction ratings? How happy are customers with me? And if you're a small business, you might think, well, I can't afford to be going out there and doing, satisfaction surveys, and I can't afford to be employing research agencies. And that's fine, because you don't need to do complicated things to be able to derive information about your business from your customers that helps you. So you could do something as simple as putting a single question on the email that you send invoices out with, and just asking the customer to reply and say, how are we doing? Are we doing well? Is there things we could do to help you? Is there things that you need from us that we aren't delivering? And you could change that periodically. You might have seasonal questions where you ask different questions at different times of the year, or you might ask the same question every month when you send out your invoice to that customer. But it's a very simple mechanism, and just asking often tells you a lot about what your customers are feeling, what their future needs are. And that allows you to close that loop and really create a circle of feedback that allows you to use that information to build new products, allows you to use that information to provide better service pathways, to train staff in something that you didn't even realize was happening. The other thing you really need to think about is enabling your frontline staff. So if you're a business that has people employed by you, enabling them to freely come and give you feedback from customers is really important, because sometimes those frontline staff are nervous to tell you what a customer said. And that might not be for any good reason other than they perceive you as being a figure of authority, or they don't want to disappoint you. But if they're not comfortable giving you that feedback from the customer, then they're not comfortable, you're not hearing the true story. And it's really important that you hear that frontline feedback, whether it's that I wasn't able to help that customer today because I didn't have the right tools, or I wasn't able to help the customer today because I didn't know what to do, I didn't have the right process, or whether it's that the customer was unhappy with something because something wasn't available to them, or they weren't able to access something in a timely enough way. All those things are really important, and they provide you with really big clues as to how you can build on that retention profile, build on the service you're delivering to customer, and also improve the service offering that you're giving to them, or the product offering that you're giving to them. So I'd really encourage you to go and think about that, and think also about when they tell you good things, how are you going to capture that information when they are happy? Because happy customers become your strongest advocates, and they bring you qualified new leads at zero acquisition cost. You're not paying for marketing, paying for advertising, you're not paying salespeople to go and close deals for you. You're actually just acquiring customers through word of mouth and feedback. And although I wouldn't encourage word of mouth to be your only marketing strategy, it's the lowest cost marketing strategy, because people buy from people that they've been recommended to, and buy from people that they trust. So thinking about all of the ways that you can look for customer satisfaction indicators and retention, and implement retention strategies, allows you to capitalize on these happy customers. But understanding how to garner information from happy customers that then becomes that social proof, becomes that trust communication, is really important too. So whether it's asking them for a Google review, which is probably the simplest way, in a way that everybody's very familiar with nowadays, that if you're happy with my services, would you please give me a Google review? It's very easy to ask that, and it's very easy for people to action it. I've seen people put a Google review QR code on the back of a business card, and if someone's happy, then just giving it to them and saying, if you wouldn't mind going and doing a Google review for me. I've seen people put it on the bottom of emails with links. So there's different ways you can approach that. Even like a QR code at the counter, if you're a retailer, is often really helpful as well. But there's other things that you can do, especially if you're a services-based business and you're selling a complex product, or you're selling knowledge-based services. Developing that social proof through video testimonials and written testimonials is really important too. And pulling that together is not very hard. And they don't have to be professionally curated. They don't have to be beautifully edited. Just having a customer talk about your business, and then being able to put that into your social media channels, onto your website, is a really solid performance metric that allows potential customers to just drop onto your website, treat it like a digital business card, have a little look around and see what people are saying about you. That allows people who are following you on social media to be reinforced that you're a great person to deal with, you're a great company to work with, And so those services and those ways of capturing that happy feedback really contributes to your retention, contributes to that word of mouth purchasing. It also contributes to your trust factor. So trust is really important in business and in life, but mostly in business. Trust is the foundation for upsell, cross-sell, and for closing new deals in a less costly way, because when people have an element of trust with you, it's going to be easier to get them over the line. Can we move to the next slide, please, Carl? So there's a quick retention health check that I think you should go back and do in your business. So have a think about, are you flying blind? And if the answer is no, if the answer to any of the following questions is no, your business is actively leaking revenue. So do you know your repeat purchase or renewal rate? Do you know your net promoter score or referral rate or your Google review rate? Do you have a clear process to act on customer feedback? So just think about those for a moment and answer the question to yourself. Are you flying blind? Now, simple metrics that matter. You don't need anything to be very complex. You don't need to implement software. You just need to start by tracking things in a spreadsheet. Just figuring out who buys again. If you're selling through an e-commerce platform, you're probably getting that information automatically through your e-commerce provider. But if you're a services business, I've been talking to an architect recently who has 10 years worth of contact data in his phone. He doesn't even have a spreadsheet. So we couldn't even contact customers to ask them for a referral. We have to go and literally pull everything out and start contacting them as if they're new customers. So just keeping track of who is buying from you again, keeping track of who your customers are, is really important to allow you to make informed decisions. Average customer lifespan. So do you know how long a customer stays active for? Again, if you're an e-commerce website, that's probably very easy because the websites that you're building are built to give you that data. But if you're a services business, or if you're a small manufacturer, are you tracking that data? Are you looking at your average customer lifespan? Do you know how often people buy from you? Do you know when they churn and why they churn? Do they stop buying your product, or do they buy it from someone else? And then understanding what percentage of revenue is from repeat customers versus new customers. So, that's a big red flag as well. If the majority of your purchases in your business are single point purchases, then, you're constantly having to find new customers, find new customers, find new customers. Whereas if you're getting at least a portion of your revenue from repeat customers, it's minimizing the cost of acquisition and it's maximizing the lifetime revenue that you're achieving from each customer that you've already acquired. So if we go back to the architect that I've been working with, his goal when he started talking to me was that he recognized that the majority of his business comes through word of mouth, but he also recognized that he has never actually gone out to customers and asked them to pass on word of mouth referrals. He's also never gone out to customers to update them on what his business is working on, or just to keep himself top of mind with them, so that when they are having a coffee with someone who says, "Oh, I need an architect," that he comes to mind for them. So his goal was very simple, but actually implementing it is going to be quite tedious, I guess is the best word, because he hasn't kept any information in his business and he hasn't measured that. Can we move to the next slide, please, Carl? So there's 3 steps to improve retention. So this is what I would like you all to go home and think about tonight or tomorrow when you want to start reflecting on how you can act on some of this stuff that we've talked about today. So first of all, master onboarding. The first 90 days, if you're a services business particularly, the first 90 days that you onboard someone is critical. Set clear expectations and help customers get an early win. Help them to build confidence in whatever it is that you have sold them. Make sure that you hold their hand in that process, because a happy onboarding sets you up better for a happy lifetime customer. Stay connected. Regular contact shows that you value your customer's relationship, not just the transaction. You don't have to do anything complicated. You don't have to do anything onerous. Just use simple check-ins or provide them with relevant insights. So for this architect, we're just talking about sending out a quarterly newsletter that updates on different parts of his audience. So whether it's a consumer who built a house with him, then we might just send them some images of latest projects he's been working on, a bit of information about the industry. If it's some of the builders that he works with, he might send them out, new information about projects that are coming up that they might want to tender for. So it's just keeping in contact and just giving them information that's relevant. Not a lot of information, just a bit, just enough to keep you relevant and top of mind with those customers. And then lastly, fix issues fast. Like, when you hear that a customer's not happy, when you get feedback from staff or you see a review come through, just acknowledge the concerns within 24 hours, and solving a small problem quickly helps to build trust. Some of the best testimonials I've seen in my life as a marketer are from customers who were unhappy, and the business worked to resolve those issues with them, and then they become an advocate as a customer. And it creates a very strong and sticky relationship, and it creates the best testimonials because people then trust that it's not just marketing spin. They trust that the customer is telling the truth, because they say, you know what, this was broken, but these guys really rolled up their sleeves and they dug in and they fixed it, and now it's great. And so it shows that you're open to change, you're open to customer support, and it shows that you've got a really strong ethic in terms of managing customer expectations and managing the customer. So go home, go to work tomorrow, think about those 3 things and how that can help you and your business. Can we go to the last slide, please, Carl? So just thank you very much for having me today, Carl. I really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you everyone for being online and listening to what I have to say. I really appreciate the opportunity. So just to recap, we established that customer retention is a hidden growth lever that can lift your profits by 25 to 95%. Next step, have a look at the one-page handout. It's got all the dot points on there from today. And thank you for attending. I'm from Square M Solutions. If you want to connect, my contact details are on the last slide or in the handout.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
That was a very informative seminar. As Michelle has mentioned, her details are on screen. So if you do have any specific questions, please do make a note of them. If you also registered for today's session, I'll be sending you the handout by email, and you can directly contact Michelle. If you have joined late, this session is being recorded, so you can watch the entire session on our YouTube channel after today concludes. So with that in mind, I think Michelle will jump into the Q&A component of the session, and we'll just jump on the first question. I think it's quite topical. I think it affects every business. You mentioned it as well about negative feedback. What are some of some of the techniques and sort of steps that you recommended to some of your small business clients to sort of manage negative feedback and turn it actually into a positive sort of engagement?
Yeah, look, I think just asking the customer what the problem was. So even if you get a 4-star review, bring them up and ask them, what would it take to make this a 5? What is it that you need to see to change this? And then taking that on board, sometimes you don't even need to resolve it. Sometimes it's just explaining to the customer why something is out of your control and it's not actually a problem with the service. It's a problem with, like say something's going slow and you might have to explain to them that it's actually to do with the way that the data travels over the internet, or it's to do with something else that's outside of your control. And once they understand, it can turn that negative into a positive. But unless you ask them, you don't know what's really causing the problem. So it really comes down to communicating clearly with them, listening, understanding, and then sharing either what you're going to do or why you can't do it. But it's closing the loop as well. If you ask them what the problem is and you go and fix it, but you don't tell them you fixed it, they don't know you fixed it. So closing the loop actually makes them happy too.
Yeah, I think closing the loop is vital, right? I think sometimes, business owners will fear doing that because they don't know what response they're going to get from the customer.
Yep.
But I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't lean into that.
Absolutely.
And, just put the fear aside and be open to understanding a bit more about why they've reviewed your business in that way. I've had a concern about it.
Absolutely. Most customers are really happy to share. You get the occasional one who's difficult, but in the majority, customers are happy to share with you what was wrong, and they're happy to hear what you did about it. And even if it doesn't fully resolve their issues, they're happy that you did something.
And Michelle, have you we've had a query around have you worked with a client where you sort of helped develop a plan to engage with customers? We talked about engagement and how to ensure that you retain them moving forward and, keep them warm as positive advocates for your business. Have you worked with clients, develop a plan to, develop that strategy?
Absolutely. So, I'm working with a very large company at the moment, and we're developing something for them where we're listening to their customers. We're doing a listening process with their customers. And then from that, we develop a plan to how to address the issues within their business. So sometimes those issues are one-to-one issues with an individual customer. So, for example, we couldn't agree to a term in a contract. Sometimes those issues come up across multiple customers, and then you can identify them as being systemic issues across the organisation. And you look at that holistically about, is it that the customer service team wasn't trained well enough to answer questions? Is it that there's a problem with the software that's meaning that the customer can't actually reach a screen? So what are those systemic issues across the business versus what's an individual thing that one customer needs done for them to resolve their issue? And we just put that plan together. We're just putting that plan together at the moment for them so that they can then go and work on that over the next 12 months. And then we'll do another check-in with their customers and see how they're feeling. Are they feeling like things have moved and the dial has shifted?
Yeah. And how important, Michelle, is it to your, the work that you do, and also, I guess, for your clients as well, about balancing, just, trying to, it's always about growing your business and, adding new products or, new service lines. Again, doing that business development, actually critically looking at your business to see whether the experience from a, user experience perspective, from a customer experience perspective is working well, is achieving the goals that have been set for that product or service. How important is it to balance those two during a typical week rather than just focusing on, thinking about new products or services that you can just add to your portfolio?
Look, honestly, I think that retention is, as I've said through the presentation, it's the hidden gold mine. If you can manage your retention, all of your growth is growth. If you're not managing your retention, then your growth is actually just feeding what you've lost. So it's only through that real customer listening and understanding what's happening, that you can manage that retention. So all of the new products and new services are important, but hanging on to the existing customers is just as important. So I think they have to form an equal part in any strategy. And it doesn't have to take up all day, every day thinking about these things. You know, you can just do once a quarter check-ins. You can, it can be light touch depending on the size of the business. It can be quite a light touch program. But if you're not thinking about it, the old saying of what gets measured matters. If you're not measuring it, you're not thinking about it. And if you're not thinking about it, it's probably leaking out the door without you realising.
Michelle, we've had a question about customer retention here, and in today's day and age, I guess, we can compare to the past. Loyalty, of course, rewarded, and a lot of people stuck on the same organisation for many, many years. The fear of changing, it's difficult to do that sort of thing. But now, of course, a lot of competition. People are really encouraging, people to churn, right?
Yeah.
But I guess, how can businesses, sort of small business, intervene? So what sort of early warning signs and steps should they be looking out for to prevent that churn occurring in such a competitive these days, and with information being so accessible through technology?
Yeah, look, it's really tough, and it changes constantly. So it's really overwhelming a lot for small businesses. But it's really about knowing your numbers. And if you're looking at your numbers, like, so say you're a small software house and you're looking at your numbers, you will see when things start, when the graphs start to turn. When they start to turn, that's when you need to do something about it. Don't wait for it to turn. Like the printer that I talked about early in my speech was about, they knew that every X period of time, this one big customer has a drop in revenue. And that drop in revenue was much bigger than it normally is at that time of the year. And they didn't go and talk to the customer. They thought, oh, it's just the seasonal change. Then the next month it went down further. And then the next month it went down further. And then on the fourth month, they went to talk to the customer. Like, it was probably already too late, even the first month when it dipped. But, just when you see the change, go and have the conversation. When you see the change, think about your strategy. Don't wait for it to actually be a trend. Don't assume it's a blip.
Yeah, because there are genuine reasons why, right?
Yeah, and it might be a genuine reason why, but if you ask and you get told, oh, it's because of this, then that's fine, you can move on. But if you ask and you find out that a competitor is coming in and undercutting you, then you can go and at least protect other revenue.
Yeah. And just an extension of that for our audience to sort of delve into a bit more detail, Michelle, if they are successful in that approach and they've onboarded the customer, you sort of mentioned that the first 90 days is quite an important period of time. What does a great sort of onboarding experience look like in your experience?
So again, like, people assume a great onboarding experience has to be smooth, and I don't think it has to be smooth. I think it has to be appropriate for the customer, and it has to be open and transparent. So if there's problems, just be open about the problems and talk to the customer and just work through the problems with them. And then at the end, you'll have a lot happier customer. Whereas if you're onboarding a customer and they have problems and you try to hide the problems, then usually they can still feel it anyway, or they feel the lack of transparency. And that openness is usually a much better path to success and customer satisfaction than, hiding problems and trying to disguise them, or just going quiet while you're trying to solve a problem.
Yes. And I think acknowledging sometimes the business's shortcomings is usually a path to making change, right?
Yeah. Yep. And most, there's some things that you probably don't want to say to a customer, and that's fine. But being as honest and open as you can be, is always a really good path to creating a trustful relationship that then leads to a longer and stronger relationship.
And that's so important, right? Customers on both sides is going to be a bit of information asymmetry, right? Customers don't
Yeah,
know how the business is operating, the business doesn't know what the customer expects. You mentioned about the importance of clear communication. I think that's quite, relevant here. I think oftentimes, given my background as you sort of see consumer complaints materialize because both parties are not on
yeah,
common ground with understanding of what's actually going to happen.
absolutely.
They have different expectations. There's opportunities that potentially can't be exploited. There are risks that the customer are aware of. There's so many differing sort of perspectives and views on both sides. If you can achieve harmony in that respect, you will have a better customer experience because there'll be more understanding of you.
Absolutely.
There'll be more understanding of why they've come with a concern, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I
And
think
most times customers are understanding as well that things go wrong or things don't go as smoothly as you thought they would. And they're usually quite understanding and, they'll work with you to find an outcome if you're as transparent as you can be with them.
Yeah. And Michelle, I guess final question that we've got is just around, I know there's only got 2 days left in the week, but if you could recommend something that, some of our audience members could do this week or in the next couple of days, so what would be your key tips to sort of help manage that retention piece?
I think just pick up the phone and talk to a couple of customers, choose your top two customers, pick up the phone, give them a call, ask them how things are going. It doesn't have to be a long conversation. I recommend to people that for their top 10% of customers, they schedule a 15-minute check-in every quarter that has no agenda and is just to check in and see how things are going. You're not taking up much time with your customer, you're not taking up much time of yours, but you're just keeping that communication channel open.
I think it sounds so simple and logical, Michelle, but oftentimes people just forget.
Well, especially as small business owners, you just get so busy, and you are a practitioner. You're doing your job, like the thing that you started your business to do, and sometimes you forget about the running of the business around you. So it's sometimes hard as a small business owner.
And I was just mentioning before, forget the small business owners, even your large corporates, your banks, they never engage with you. They never engage with you, right? And they always say, whenever you have feedback, on a call because you've got an unexpected rate rise or they've narrowed the service, like, we'll treat that as a complaint. It's like, it's not a complaint. We're just trying to talk.
Yeah. We just want to know what's going on.
We haven't spoken in so many. All my engagement with you is when the bank, the direct debit happens or we pay your invoice.
Yeah.
But outside of that, you never really check in to see whether I'm enjoying the service or doing anything else.
Yep.
And you sort of wonder why there's always going to be churn because they just don't really invest too much in that. But I guess with larger corporates, they can absorb that sort of churn. Whereas with small business owners, you will have greater growth if you do actually,
So in a larger business, they'd just be monitoring their numbers, and they would have a threshold at which they would say that that's a problem. And I've worked for a big telco in the past, and you just knew that there was a certain amount of churn, but when churn reached a certain point, it was an issue because it had gone beyond the normal amount of churn. So big businesses do look at the numbers slightly differently, whereas a smaller business, you've got less capacity to absorb that.
Spot on. Beautiful. Okay, with that in mind, we'll bring it to a close. Michelle, really appreciate your time today. Just sharing her details on screen. If you're joining us today or in the future, during watching it on YouTube, Michelle's details are on screen. If you register by email, I'll send you the handout to have her details too, and you can always contact her when you wish. And that brings us to the formal sort of close of today's session. If you enjoyed it, please do share it on social media or like us or do whatever you have to do. It's all word of mouth in my respect as well. I don't spend any money on marketing because I find for myself, I really value the community and the willingness of presenters like Michelle sort of joining, being informed and sharing some words of wisdom on topics that are very topical at this point in time. So thank you again, Michelle. Thank you to all our listeners. And yeah, this is the last session for the year. So we'll be back in the new year. So wishing everyone a great sort of break over the next 2 months, and you know, a sort of restful festive season. And we'll look forward to sort of bringing you more sessions in the new year.
Thanks for the kind messages, Michaela.
All right, well, thank you so much today, and have a good night. Bye.
Thanks,
for now.
Carl. See ya. Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.